You're in a meeting. You say something. The room goes quiet. Someone laughs. And in that single moment, something hijacks your entire body. Your face burns. Your chest tightens. You want to dissolve into the floor and never come back. That was 3 years ago. You still think about it. Here's what nobody tells you about embarrassment. Neuroscientists have discovered that the brain processes social pain in the exact same regions it processes physical pain. When you feel embarrassed, your brain is not being dramatic. It genuinely believes you are in danger. Not metaphorical danger, survival danger. That's why you can't just get over it. You're not weak, you're wired. But here's what changes everything. The danger embarrassment is protecting you from stopped being real a long time ago. You are no longer a prehistoric human who needed the tribe to survive. Being laughed at will not kill you. Your nervous system just hasn't received that update yet. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why embarrassment has controlled you, where it actually comes from, and how to reach a place where no moment, no room, no person can make you want to disappear again. Not because you stop caring, but because you finally understand what you were actually afraid of all along. Chapter 1. The Survival Glitch. Everyone tells you to stop being so sensitive. Stop caring what people think. Just be confident. As if embarrassment is a personality flaw you chose. But embarrassment isn't weakness, it's ancient software running on modern hardware. Here's the reframe. Thousands of years ago, being rejected by your social group meant death. No tribe meant no food, no shelter, no protection. So your brain evolved an early warning system, embarrassment, to alert you the moment you risked social rejection. It worked perfectly, back then. The problem is that system never got updated. Your brain cannot tell the difference between being exiled from your prehistoric tribe and mispronouncing a word in a Zoom call. To your nervous system, both feel equally catastrophic. That's not sensitivity, that's a survival glitch. Your colleague corrects your grammar in front of the whole team. Your face flushes, your stomach drops, your brain has just activated a threat response designed for physical danger because it cannot distinguish social risk from actual risk. You aren't overreacting, you're running ancient code in a situation it was never designed for. Next time embarrassment floods your body, say this to yourself. This is old software. I am not in danger. This is just my brain being ancient. Think about the last time you felt deeply embarrassed. Was there ever any actual danger, or was it entirely your nervous system misreading the moment? Chapter 2. The Spotlight Illusion. You trip on the pavement, and in that instant, you are absolutely certain that every single person within a half-mile radius saw it, judged it, and will remember it forever. They won't. Most of them didn't even look up. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect. It is the consistent human tendency to dramatically overestimate how much other people are noticing, watching, and remembering us. Research from Cornell University found that people believed twice as many people noticed their embarrassing moments than actually did. Twice. You were carrying shame for an audience that was never even watching. The reason this happens is that you are the main character of your own life. Your thoughts, your feelings, your mistakes, all of it is in constant high definition for you, so you project that intensity outward and assume everyone else is experiencing you at the same resolution. They aren't. They're too busy being the main character of their own story. You spill your coffee in a cafe. You spend the next 10 minutes convinced everyone is staring. But the woman by the window is rehearsing an argument she's going to have with her mother. The man at the counter is calculating whether he can afford rent this month. Nobody's hosting a documentary about your spilled coffee. When embarrassment strikes, remind yourself, the spotlight I feel is almost entirely in my own mind. People are far more focused on themselves than on me. When was the last time you spent significant mental energy judging someone else's embarrassing moments, or did it fade from your memory within minutes? Chapter 3. The Identity Hijack. Here's the thing that makes embarrassment so brutal. It doesn't feel like you made a mistake, it feels like you are a mistake. That shift from "I did something awkward" to "I am fundamentally flawed" is where embarrassment becomes suffering. Psychologists call this the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt says "I did something bad." Shame says "I am something bad." Embarrassment almost always hijacks your identity rather than just your action. And identity-level threats feel existential because they are. If you were the problem, there's nowhere to hide and nothing to fix. But the action was never you, it was a moment. A moment is not a person. You give a presentation and your voice shakes the entire time. The embarrassment that follows isn't just about the shaky voice. Your brain has already written the headline, "This proves I am not capable. This proves I don't belong here." Suddenly, one shaky presentation is evidence for a life sentence about who you are. That's the identity hijack in action. When you feel that burning shame rising, catch it and say, "This was something I did in a moment. It is not a verdict on who I am." Think about an embarrassing moment you've carried for years. Have you been treating it as an event that happened or as proof of something permanently wrong with you? Chapter 4. The Audience That Never Leaves. You know what's stranger than what people think of you in the moment? The fact that you keep imagining what they're still thinking about you weeks later. Nobody has that kind of real estate in anyone else's mind, but embarrassment makes you believe they do. There is an invisible audience that lives entirely inside your head. It is made up of everyone who has ever witnessed your worst moments, your third-grade teacher, your ex, that stranger at the party. And this imaginary audience has perfect memory, unlimited attention, and absolutely nothing better to do than replay your most uncomfortable moments on loop. The real people have long moved on. Your internal audience never does. The terrifying truth is that you are not afraid of what people thought. You are afraid of what you think they thought, and what you think they thought is almost always far harsher than reality. You said something awkward at a dinner party 6 months ago. The host forgot about it by the time they were doing the dishes that night, but you are still editing what you should have said, replaying the faces around the table, constructing an elaborate courtroom where you were both the defendant and the harshest judge. When the internal audience starts replaying, tell yourself, the real people have moved on. The only one still watching is me. I can choose to leave the theater. Who is sitting in your internal audience right now, and when did they actually stop watching you in real life? Chapter 5. The Vulnerability Paradox. Here is something that will feel completely backwards at first. The moments you are most afraid to let people see are almost always the exact moments that make people trust and like you more. Embarrassment convinces you that exposure is destruction. The paradox is that authentic exposure is actually connection. Researcher Brené Brown spent years studying human connection and found that vulnerability, the very thing embarrassment makes you hide, is the birthplace of belonging. When you try to appear flawless, people feel the performance and pull away. When you let a real moment show, people lean in. Your imperfection signals to others that it's safe for them to be imperfect too. You become the permission they've been waiting for. Embarrassment sells you a lie, that people connect with your highlight reel. They don't. They connect with your bloopers. You're leading a workshop and you completely lose your train of thought mid-sentence. You go silent. Instead of powering through or over-apologizing, you say honestly, "I just completely lost where I was going with that. Give me a second." The room laughs warmly. Someone said, "Same, honestly." The moment of realness built more trust than 10 polished slides ever could. When you feel exposed, try saying, "This moment of realness is not destroying my image, it is making me human to the people around me." Think about someone you deeply trust and admire. Was it their perfection that made you feel close to them, or was it a moment when they were real? Chapter 6. The Shame Rehearsal Trap. Most people think the way to avoid embarrassment is to mentally rehearse everything that could go wrong before it happens. Cover all the angles, prepare for every possible humiliation, be ready. What they're actually doing is practicing suffering they may never experience. Anticipatory embarrassment, dreading humiliation before it happens, activates the same emotional pain as actual embarrassment. Your brain cannot fully distinguish between vividly imagining an event and living it. So when you spend 40 minutes before a party rehearsing every awkward conversation that might happen, you have already experienced 30 minutes of social pain, and you haven't even left the house yet. You are embarrassed in advance, repeatedly, for events that mostly never unfold the way you feared. You have a job interview tomorrow. Tonight, you lie in bed running through every possible way you could stumble over your words, blank on a question, or say something strange. By the time morning comes, you've already suffered through 30 versions of an interview that hasn't happened. You walk in exhausted from a humiliation that was entirely fictional. Replace the rehearsal with this single line.
I cannot prepare for every moment, but I can trust myself to handle whatever actually happens. How much of your emotional life has been spent suffering through embarrassments that never actually occurred?
Chapter 7. The Recovery Reveal. Here's what separates people who are never rattled by embarrassing moments from people who are. It is not that they feel less embarrassment. It is that they recover faster. And recovery is a learnable skill. Psychologists call this emotional resilience, and it's not a personality trait, it's a practice. The speed of your recovery from embarrassment determines how much power it holds over your life, far more than the intensity of the moment itself. A slow recovery means the embarrassment keeps living rent-free for days, weeks, sometimes years. A fast recovery means the moment passes through you instead of staying in you. The goal is never to not feel embarrassed. The goal is to reduce the half-life of each episode. Fast recovery has a formula. Acknowledge, normalize, redirect. You name what happened, you remind yourself it's human, and you move forward without extended self-punishment. You mispronounce a word during a speech. Old response, spiral inward, lose your thread, spend the rest of the speech in your head critiquing yourself. New response, you smile slightly, correct it naturally, and keep going. Internally, you say, that happened, it was human, moving on. The audience forgets within seconds, so do you. Practice saying, I acknowledge this moment, it is human, I am already moving forward. Think about your last embarrassing moment. How long did the recovery take? What would have shortened it? Chapter 8. The Courage Reframe. Every person you admire for their confidence was embarrassed publicly and kept going anyway. Confidence is not the absence of embarrassment, it is the decision to act in spite of it. This changes what embarrassment means entirely. When you avoid situations because you might get embarrassed, you are not protecting yourself. You are shrinking your life to the size of your comfort zone. Every avoided presentation, every held-back opinion, every party you didn't go to because something might go wrong, those are not acts of self-protection. They are trades. You traded a possible moment of discomfort for a guaranteed reduction in your life. And over time, those trades compound. Embarrassment avoided is not safety, it is a smaller life. You have an idea in a meeting, a real, potentially great idea, but there's a chance it might land badly. So you say nothing. You drive home, and the idea is still there, unnamed, unexpressed. Meanwhile, someone else says something half as good and gets praised for it. The embarrassment you avoided cost you something real. The discomfort you feared was hypothetical. Start telling yourself, the risk of embarrassment is the price of a fully lived life. I am willing to pay it. What is one thing you have been holding back from doing because embarrassment felt like too high a price? What has that silence or absence actually cost you? Chapter 9. The Self-Compassion Switch. You would never speak to a friend the way you speak to yourself after an embarrassing moment. The words you use internally would end friendships if you said them out loud.
That gap between how you treat others and how you treat yourself is where most of your suffering lives. Self-compassion researcher Kristen Neff found that people who treat themselves the same way they'd offer a close friend recover from painful experiences significantly faster, take more risks, and have higher long-term confidence. Not because they lower their standards, but because self-criticism is not actually motivating, it is paralyzing. The voice that says, "You idiot, how could you?" does not make you better, it just makes you smaller. You do not need to earn recovery. You do not need to finish punishing yourself before you're allowed to feel okay again. Your voice cracks while giving a toast at your best friend's wedding. Internally, the self-critic starts immediately. Everyone noticed. You ruined it. Why can't you just hold it together? Now try the other voice. You were emotional because you love your friend. That was real. That was human. Everyone in that room has had a moment like that. Same event, completely different emotional aftermath. When the self-critic activates, switch to, "What would I say to my closest friend right now if this had happened to them?" Then say that to yourself instead. How different would your inner voice sound if you spoke to yourself the way you speak to the people you love most?
Chapter 10. The Identity Upgrade. Everything in this video has been moving toward one single shift. Not a technique, not a coping strategy. A fundamental change in how you see yourself in relation to other people's opinions. Embarrassment only has power over you when your sense of self is located outside yourself. When your self-worth lives in what other people think, every room becomes a courtroom, and every person becomes a judge. You are constantly on trial, constantly presenting evidence of your value, constantly braced for a verdict. That is an exhausting way to exist, and it means that anyone at any moment can destabilize your entire sense of who you are with a single look, a single laugh, a single awkward silence. The upgrade is this: relocate your self-worth. Place it inside your own relationship with your values, your intentions, and your character, not in the reactions of people around you. You walk into a room and say something that doesn't land. Old identity, the room's reaction tells you who you are. New identity, you already know who you are, and this moment is just a moment. The room's reaction is information at most. It is never a verdict, because you are no longer on trial. You resigned from the courtroom a long time ago. Begin practicing this by saying, "I am not defined by this moment. I know who I am, and no room gets to overrule that." If you no longer needed any room's approval to feel secure in yourself, what would you do, say, or become that you've been holding back? Knowledge without practice is just entertainment, so here is your 1-week entry point. For the next 7 days, pick just one tool from this video, the simplest one, the spotlight effect. Every time embarrassment rises this week, pause and ask yourself honestly, how many people are actually watching right now? Not in your head, actually watching. You will find the number is almost always 0 or 1, and that 1 is you. Do this consistently for 7 days and something begins to shift. You start catching the spotlight illusion before it inflates. You start moving through moments faster. The recovery time shrinks. And as the recovery time shrinks, embarrassment loses its ability to make decisions for you. By week 2, add one more tool, then another. You are not trying to overhaul yourself overnight. You are rewiring, slowly and consistently, the oldest alarm system in your brain. The person you are becoming doesn't stop feeling embarrassed. They simply stop being stopped by it. They speak anyway. They show up anyway. They stay in the room anyway. Not because they became fearless, but because they finally understood that the fear was never about what people thought. It was always about whether they believed they were enough. And that answer, the only one that actually matters, was never in anyone else's hands. It was always yours. If this shifted something for you, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe to Inner Logic for more.